And we have this wonderful panel here. I would love to hear a little bit from someone from the audience. If you have a challenge about bringing a Web 2 business into Web 3, if you have any questions about that, now is the perfect time to ask them before everyone else arrives. Anyone interested in that? I see a gentleman smiling. Can I pick on you? Tell me your name, what you do, and if you have any questions for the panel.
No, just smiling to the panel actually. But no, I mean we're Dubbit, and Dubbit is one of the biggest Roblox developers. So we're an agency. We develop experiences, and we're actually on the journey from Web 2 to Web 3. So it'll be very interesting to have a chat. I think for us it's community at the moment. I think we're looking a lot at the community. So I was hoping to pick up some interesting, topics around that side of things. But I think definitely a community. I think the early adopters of certain technologies, and for them to be consistent and actually to stay and develop that further. That connection to me is like what's fascinates me at the moment. Is like the challenge as well.
Well, they'll keep that in mind when they answer stuff later on. Thank you. Let's see. Who else should I? Oh, you want to introduce yourself? Where are you from and challenges?
I'm Blair. I'm from an agency called Rehab. I guess one of the challenges really is like public perception, specifically around sort of, I guess, Web3 and there's still an association with crypto, but does everyone think that now the FTX thing's happened, the sort of separation between crypto and Web3 can finally kind of happen, and will that help drive like use cases amongst brands and mass adoption?
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we heard you. Short answer is we're likely going to cover that in the panel today, your question. So.
Because we like right. On the panel, it's quite nice.
Great, we'll just give it a couple more minutes for people to come roaming in. Does anyone else like to share? Yeah, go on.
Hi guys, my name is Daniel Simon from Off-Chain London. We have a big crypto community in 61 countries, but this is not the point. My question is, how would you convince like Warren Buffett, like Berkeley, to involve him into metaverse or into crypto, like Warren Buffett, someone like that? I mean, he's amazing. Obviously, the biggest investor of the history, maybe. I mean, it's amazing. But what would you say to Warren Buffett? I mean, Justin Trump. I mean, son, he tried. But
I love that question. So I think, if I remember correctly, Warren Buffett's like very traditional in his investments, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, that kind of thing. He doesn't want to invest in tech like Facebook, and exactly. Yeah. Interesting.
But Warren Buffett traditionally invests in assets that offer him and other investors a cash flow. Where is the cash flow that crypto offers currently? What is the cash flow? What is the utility that crypto brings as an asset? Sure, it's interesting from an intellectual perspective. I'm not denying it, like Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer decentralized network for sending money without third parties, but when it comes to most cryptos, where is the underlying value that they provide to the average consumer? If you can answer that question, then maybe you might convince him to invest in it.
But I think that was the question, right? How would you convince? Yeah. Right? But I would say, having read or followed Warren Buffett for a while, Like, yes, you're right, 85% of his investments are pretty traditional, but he does invest 15% in new disruptive technologies. And what could be more disruptive than metaverse? Especially if you could think about the fact that the vision is amazing, but metaverse at least has I mean, there are baby steps. So if you see, there were so many great examples today. I think our panelists, the fellow panelists, as well as the speakers shared on how we already are living in the age of the metaverse, right? And I think for him, that's probably going to be very exciting. The fact that it is grounded in somewhat of a reality and it is some investment in the future. So it's not as risky a bet. It might be a risk worth taking. He doesn't go for complete speculation, but he definitely has a certain percentage of his portfolio that has some more riskier assets.
So we were just having an informal Q&A with the panel before we officially started, and let's get started today. My name is Caitlin Zhang. I'm the CEO of Oval Branding. I'm privileged to be your host and panel moderator today. I'm going to let the panelists each introduce themselves briefly and tell us what you guys have been working on.
Hi everyone, my name is Naina Singh. I am a general manager at Consensus, one of the first well-known Web3 end-to-end blockchain providers. Within Consensus, I work on the Infura brand of products and focusing mostly on providing the infrastructure and API tools for customers to build their Web3 applications on top.
Hello everybody. So I'm Antoine. Hello, I'm the sales director in the UK for Ledger, so the famous security hardware wallet manufacturer. We also have a B2B custody platform offer, and I'm driving the sales effort here for this.
Hello everyone, I'm Mihai. I'm the Metaverse lead at Nizu. We're the leading market research firm in the gaming industry. So we basically work with most, if not all, of the largest gaming publishers and developers, and with brands. And we do so in a few different ways. So first we provide data on games and on player behaviors and on the gaming industry in general, like revenues, like number of players and so on and so forth. In traditional games, esports, cloud gaming, mobile gaming, and so on. And we also provide consultancy support, and that consultancy can range from pretty much anything to M&A advisory within the gaming industry to gaming metaverse strategies to, you name it.
Hi everyone, my name is Will Hambling. I'm the founder and creative director at Within International. I'm actually here to talk about Enter Agora, which is a tech spin-off which was born, as lots of us were, at the advent of COVID, in partnership with not so normal, a large global law firm in DLA Piper. So we are literally onboarding large organizations into brand new spaces, and frankly, it's like pulling teeth. So I'm here to share what that's like, what the experiences are, but also the success stories. It's really complex. This is a difficult issue, and that's what we've been tackling for the last 2.5 years. So.
Before Katie, maybe we can get the Tech Circus team. Can we have, there is a short clip to play later on if we can get some help with the PowerPoint to play a short clip. Can you grab someone who can help with the PowerPoint to play a short clip later? Please, thanks. There's no one from the Tech Circus team here. Thanks so much. Sorry, Katie, there
That's
you go.
okay. So I'm Katie Hudson, and I am Managing Director of Futurescapes at Publicis, which is an advertising holding company. So we kind of offer a full range of services from creative to design, production, content, data and technology services as well, to in the traditional sense where we're thinking about customers' own marketing technology and their own platforms and linking that up with advertising technology and their data, et cetera, to deliver a campaign. Well, we've also applied that same thought process to developing a suite of metaverse services and working together with a number of different partners on starting to architect solutions for customers to bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 and create their own Web 3 experiences but not have them sort of created in an island, more focusing on creating omni-channel experience and connecting the dots between all the different places where audiences are today and where they'll be in future and what their behaviors will be. So that's me.
Thank you, Vanos. What I would like to start off with is learning about your metaverse experience, what kind of success stories you've seen, and I just want to hear what's the most interesting, coolest thing that you've experienced.
Who wants to go first? Who has the coolest story?
I'll go first. I don't have the coolest story. I mean, given that we're working strictly with professional services, chances are I don't have the coolest story. Depending on your perspective. Our first project was with World Economic Forum, which, as we all know, is a lumbering giant of an organization. Some positive things. I don't want to talk about the other things that they do here, but that flag in the sand for us was a really exciting moment. And that for us, it was 2.5 years ago, it was a single player experience where you would wander around a relatively rudimentary environment, better than Minecraft, but this is no Call of Duty. This is a few years back. It didn't look great. What we learned very quickly was with our particular clients, with the big brands that we work with, there was two things that came up. One was language, and the other one was, frankly, look and feel. How does this look? Does this represent my brand? I'm a big organization. I'm a global law firm. I'm a real estate company. I'm an insurer. Does this stuff look like we look and feel? And a lot of it didn't. And the stuff that doesn't has its own place, and it's wonderful. There's loads of products that don't do that I love. So we had to get that right. And then the other thing that we had to do was to understand language, and this was probably the most exciting thing. We were going in talking to people about subjects that we weren't hugely aware of at that stage, and they were completely unaware of at that stage. So one of the most interesting things that's happened with our product is us needing to relearn the language that we speak to our clients in. We can't keep just throwing terms out because we understand them. We can't keep using acronyms and forced kind of Twitter language because the big business on the other side of the table, a few of them understand that, but the decision makers, the people who hold the power, who hold the money, glaze over, disappear. They want you to talk to them in a way that they understand. I thought the Warren Buffett question was really interesting, actually. I'd say the one we wouldn't sell it to them is by talking in riddles. We need to unify our language. We need to speak more calmly and more succinctly about the products that we've created. And we need to stop using buzzwords. So the most exciting thing for me was our team being able to get organizations like the World Economic Forum 2.5 years ago to go, actually, we'll dip a toe in here. And I think that's important. But it happened with language and it happened with look and feel. Probably not the coolest one.
One of the first really big metaverse projects that we did was with Samsung back in January of this year at the Consumer Electronics Show. We launched one of their products, the 837X, at the Consumer Electronics Show, but did it also paired with an experience that we created in Decentraland for them. And so we created a virtual version of one of their most famous sort of landmark properties and had a retail experience and a gamified experience and all kinds of great stuff. Both within the world, but we also connected that as in the way that I was sort of describing before to a lot of outside of the metaverse sort of experiences as well. So we started a Discord channel, we did an NFT drop, and it was much more successful than even we imagined. It was really fantastic. We had over 1 billion earned media impressions. We had 200,000 NFTs collected and 100,000 people that signed up for the Discord within 12 hours. So that obviously was a population that were a little bit more sort of native to this space because they knew how to respond to that and they were interested in it than the kind of mass consumer population that we're now starting to address in ways that are kind of much more seamless and ways that people can engage with that don't understand NFTs and wallets, et cetera.
So what was the most kind of talked about thing after that event? What do people remember? Like, what was the...
I think like people were just really excited that they could go in and have a meaningful experience that was engaging. It wasn't just sort of a gimmick. It was something that, and it was also something that we have used in perpetuity as well. So that's still a space that Samsung uses, and they run events, and they did an after party during the show as well. But we've continued to evolve that strategy, not just for that product and around that launch, but also like for Samsung more generally. And I think that has really been the most effective thing. It wasn't just sort of a one-off. It was a build on a wider strategy and engagement across a number of different channels. So, and
Brilliant,
obviously,
yeah.
very
Very good.
successful.
Anyone
and we're
else?
happy about it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go next and present a slightly more cynical take. So I'm going to divide this between two verticals. So we have the NFT, the Web and Web3 verticals, where it involves brands selling products, i.e. NFTs to consumers. And the second one, which involves kind of metaverse activations and virtual world activations. And this isn't only limited to blockchain-based worlds, but also includes traditional games like Roblox, Fortnite, and so on. But I think when it comes to the first one, to NFTs, Web3 activations that involves selling of digital assets to consumers, I would not consider this successful. And the reason for this is that, you know, most brands, you're a brand, you're trying to push an NFT collection to consumers, to your fans. But what you're really doing is you're basically selling a collection, most of the time at least. You're selling a collection of 5,000, 10,000 NFT PFPs or other types of NFTs. But I think the real question is who is really buying these assets? And most of the time, the answer is that a very small group of crypto and NFT people are buying these assets. And what do they want to do with them? Well, they basically just want to buy them and flip them for a profit. They don't care about the underlying business. They don't care about, you know, what that asset does, the utility it provides. They just care about buying it for $1 and selling it for $5. And I don't think, you know, even if a collection sells out, it raises, you know, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever. I wouldn't call it successful simply because it appeals to a very small group of highly financially motivated individuals. So I think the real question is how do we democratize that? How do we open this up to more people, to a casual consumers who can buy this not for $300 and who can actually use this in a meaningful way? And I think, and the second one obviously concerns metaverse and virtual world activations. And obviously, like there are a bunch of metrics going around, like how would you define success in this? Like on a platform like Roblox, Decentraland, the Sandbox, whatever. Like would you define success as a function of monthly active users, MAUs or DAUs, daily active users, or 1 month engagement or 6 months engagement or retention? Like how would you define success? Sure, you could call some of the brands activating in this world successful, but you know, at the end of the day, most of these brands are investing only a tiny fraction of their money into these worlds. They don't care about them as much because the decisions come from the top, and the people at the top generally don't understand gaming. They haven't grown up with gaming. They've grown up with other traditional advertising channels like TV and so on. Relationships are in place. So, you know, gaming is not top of mind. They're only allocating a fraction of the money. Like building a Roblox experience usually costs between 150K to 200K. So that's nothing when compared to the marketing budget of the biggest brands. So here the question is, how do we actually make these brands spend more money on gaming, and how do we present gaming to these brands so that it sounds more attractive to them?
So I think I was going to share a more, I have a very different perspective. I was going to share a personal story in terms of what I learned from, from my metaverse story. And if for those of you who were there yesterday, I talked a little bit about psychology as one of the biggest reasons why I think that metaverse and gaming could be successful. So this is kind of continuation of that. So two things. So I got a chance to be a part of the metaverse from a Web 2 perspective in my previous company. You know, I wanted to learn more about the environment. We had to build technology to support metaverse, let's just put it that way. And I had to pick an avatar, and the idea was that I had to immerse myself in this experience and see, you know, what the experience would be like, what was kludgy, what is not. It was not anything to do with augmented reality or virtual reality. It was a 2D version of that. And what I did was, and I did not realize it later on, what I did was I picked an avatar that was very much like myself. And how I looked like in real life, maybe a little bit more enhanced in some ways. I liked some of the accessories, but more or less this person looked like me. And I show up into at a concert, and the concert hasn't started. There's a fireplace, people are standing around it, and some random person starts talking to me, and it freaked me out. I didn't feel secure in that environment, and I quickly exited out of the application. And then I realized, why am I exiting out? This is very different. Like, it's not this person is sitting next to me. So I show up again. Some 5 minutes later, someone else starts talking to me, and the person had a very different accent. I couldn't place what that accent was. And again, I was uncomfortable. Figured out there was a feature called bubble, which meant that no one will come and talk to you. Those are the rules of the game. And I spent 3 days in the bubble. And then I realized, why am I in the metaverse? Like, what is going on? This is it. And it taught me a lot about myself. I was not feeling secure. So finally, days later, I get over this. But it again taught me about myself. So then I get over this experience. And now I'm talking to people. And I attended a concert. And there was it was, okay, it was not a concert. It was a sci-fi symposium. I'm crazy about sci-fi. Not many women there, so I congregate next to another woman who looked like me, woman of color, and we spent a lot of time together. And then we started talking. You want to meet for coffee? Oh, both of us are in Seattle, and turns out this person was not a woman at all. And this person was completely different than, like, he was a heterosexual white male, very different than what he had pretended to be on. I shouldn't say pretended, what his avatar was. And I was very comfortable, and he was actually using a mic to change his voice so he could have a conversation. And it taught me so much about the psychology of who this person was and how he behaved and how he wanted to learn, whereas I just wanted to be myself and not open myself up to new experiences. And honestly, that really changed how I looked at it, how I looked at software, what would help people, and how people's experiences were different. He was willing to try new things, and I wasn't. And so I realized that actually, psychology is going to have a big play in how we deal with metaverse. So
That's super interesting. I always find there's like two sort of type of people. One, that's someone who wants to look like themselves, and then there's another type who just wants to go, I don't know, be a tree or be an animal, be something completely different from what they are in normal day life. So I'm just gonna show of hands. How many of you guys are more inclined to be more like yourself? Yeah. And what about the rest of you guys? You more like try something new, experiment. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, well, my next question for the panel, maybe Antoine, you can start on this one, is how can Web2 companies, brands enter into Web3? Like, what are you guys doing at Ledger in that aspect?
Well, very interesting question. So, and I will come back to what you said, because Ledger is a very complex company, actually, and we've experienced both the situations you mentioned. We are an e-commerce platform, if you think about it, because we sell hardware wallets on our website, on Amazon, etc. And as well, technology provider for retail and B2B audiences. So our marketing team, and this is a tribute to them on the consumer side because they've done an amazing job. So they work with the sandbox to create a full end-to-end experience, like a quest on getting people to understand the different ways to secure digital asset today. And so I think we reached 300,000 people validating the quest over multiple hours of playing, etc. And I think this was quite successful in terms of marketing and just purpose of the overall experience. So that was bringing, we are a Web3 brand, but we are not a gaming brand. So we were bringing the brand into the gaming and making it a meaningful experience for all the experience with Ledger product. And the second experience I wanted to tell you about is, and you can relate to this with the luxury brands or e-commerce platform you work with, I think. We designed an NFT distribution platform called Ledger Market. and we minted 10,000 Genesis Pass for our users. And with that comes utility and specific collaborations we do with artists, with brands of NFTs like Deadfellas was for Halloween. This one is a limited edition that was available with the Genesis Pass. And so the experience the teams created is that you could redeem your physical hardware wallet directly from signing a transaction on Ledger Live or app. So again, it's just a new way of organizing e-commerce. And so with this experience, we are deploying it at enterprise level with luxury brands and so on to, well, just by providing the infrastructure to do so, because our first clients actually for the B2B, and this is my point to your question, is really if you enter into Web3, you have to think about the logistic behind. So of course, you have the creative objectives, getting into gaming or having more users, etc. But the way you interact with the asset is very different from traditional web and e-commerce experience. Here we are talking about financial transactions every time. Every asset you touch in Metaverse, in Web3, I mean, to me at least, is related to a financial transaction with NFTs and so on. So the way a company has to think about the experience is first, how do I secure the internal organization so that when our marketing team creates a new NFT, someone cannot steal the whole smart contract and, you know, just create a new FTX moment with a multi-billion-dollar
I'm so
company.
glad that like there's someone who is thinking about these security risks and digital asset security. It's really, really great.
Right. So really logistic first, how to deploy, and then I let the expert talk about how to create the experience, because that's not what we do.
And thank you for bringing a visual aid. Did you guys all see that? It's really cool. Very light.
You have a discount actually.
Does
on the
everyone
Pepsi.
know what a ledger is? Maybe for anyone in the room who doesn't know, I don't know if it's worth explaining.
Do you want to share a little bit about what?
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry. So this is a hardware wallet. So typically you have different solutions to interact with crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any NFT, software wallets or hardware wallet. This guarantees that what you see when you interact is really what you're signing behind. So you can always make sure that your interface, your iPhone, or your computer where you are sending asset is not hacked, because you will see the real address, and that's why it uses like secure elements, secure hardware elements, and different components on firmware and software layers. So it's really like, see it as your signing device, but as well a personal vault for your digital value. So signing device to make sure that when you send assets, it's going to the right address, and on a day-to-day, just secure it out of maybe centralized exchanges to make sure that you are not exposed to counterparty risk, such as FTX, again, just to mention the news.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that if you have more than 500 quid or something, you should definitely invest in like hardware to be secure, or else it's really quite high risk, as we know from what's going on. Thank you, thank you. Next, I actually wanted to ask Will, because you also brought in a clip, right, to show us what Enter Agora looks like.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually. I haven't seen it, but apparently somebody did. So this will be new for us all. Yeah, I think what we're talking about is making money. There is a much bigger question, and that is, how do you actually do business? Oh yeah. Okay. So what you're looking at here is the inside of DLA Piper's headquarters. So if we're blinding you, Mihai.
It's fine.
And the quality of this matters. The quality of this experience actually matters to DLA Piper. So these buildings have been built for them, bespoke. They do things that they need them to do. And any of these things is producible. This is pixel streaming, so we're not downloading anything. If you're working with a big business and you're going to ask them to download an executable file, they're not going to do it. They're never going to do it. Nobody wants to put anything on the App Store because nobody wants to give Apple 30%. So you have to come up with a solution where a big business can access something using a URL. And now let's think about the infrastructure with which they work on. You guys are at home, you're on Mozilla, you're on Safari, you're on Chrome. They're not. They're on Edge. Literally puts us on edge. Like, why are you doing that? Why have you picked the world's worst for your internal infrastructure? Well, because it's one of the world's most secure. It's also linked into all of their other security protocols. It's wrapped up in all of the other decision-making processes that they have. So when we talk about business, sometimes I'm not sure we're actually talking about businesses. When we talk about business, we're talking about businesses. How do businesses go online? How do they experience things like this? How do they meet one another? By a very simple case study, DLA Piper gather people from all around the world. I'm not sure many of you know who DLA Piper are, one of the biggest law firms in the world. And they've got thousands of employees. They fly them all over to Orlando. They do this every couple of years. It's called the Global Partners Conference. And as a law firm, they're a limited liability partnership, which means that everybody owns a bit. So when they fly to Orlando and they spend, going to drop $10 million on this, that's coming out of your bonus as a limited liability partner. And they do that every 2 years. And the reason they do that is so that an M&A lawyer from Palo Alto and a tax lawyer from New York, who hitherto have never met each other but work in the same business, have a conversation, have a couple of whiskey sours, find out they've got a client in common, and do business. And when they do business, the limited liability partnership grows. So does the lawyer's book of business. That's how they do it. That's why they network. And that costs them 10 million US. So imagine their surprise when we told them that we could do it for $500,000, and it always on. It's omnipresent. We don't turn it off. I also think we get confused with the metaverse, thinking that it's for events, it's for launches, it's for exhibitions, it's for parties. Of course it is. It's amazing, but we're not going to turn it off. Like, we need to start thinking much longer, much more. I've been to events and after parties and had a great time, but we're not going to turn this thing off. It's going to keep going. So when we talk about business, we're asking the question, how do you actually conduct multiple different types of businesses in one environment? How do I communicate? How do I trade? How do I share? How do I lecture? How do I educate? How do I care about my health and well-being? Very few people are talking about sustainability. None of those lawyers flew to Orlando. Think of the carbon saved, think of the money saved, think of the time saved. This is how we sell it to big business, not by confusing them, but by telling them it's cheaper, there are less carbon, so you don't have to keep greenwashing, you don't have to keep going out to the market saying, look how amazing we are, and just plonking a green logo on the front of everything. You can actively stop flying around the world in your thousands. That's how you get big business, or any business, to engage with this stuff. It's that powerful. Sorry, went on a bit there.
I actually want to echo what you said, because I think what I've seen is that, and I've been I've moved from being engineer to being a product manager, and I think one of the things, we've seen a lot of products succeed and a lot of products fail, but one commonality among success is you actually do something that is a core need for you or your business or your customers. And I think what you are talking about is the fact that they have an unmet need. They may or may not be able to articulate it. And I think it's our job to actually figure out what that articulation is. And then I think this goes back to Daniel, your question as well, how would you convince Warren Buffett? I mean, is there something that is that something this company wants to do, or this business wants to do, or Warren Buffett wants to do, of course, other than make money, or maybe make more money? What is that unmet need, and how can you convince them? So there's a reason why gaming, or when you think about media companies, they're the ones who are taking a leap of faith in metaverse, and they're the ones who are driving much of the technology, helping accelerate that technology, because they and their customers really have that need. Like, there is a need for people across the world to meet for events, for conferences. They may not have the economic means to do that. There are so many other reasons. Sustainability could be another one of them. Maybe people are more, they want to think more green. So I think it's for us to figure out what that unmet need is, what that pain is. And then and I think the thing that about Metaverse that's pretty cool is that if you just look at how far we've come in the last 10 years of what Metaverse is, it's about baby steps. You don't have to immediately turn everybody to buy VR sets and turn everything online or digital, or have your own avatars. It's one at a time. As an example, if anybody using Zoom or I think Zoom or Teams, especially in the last 2 years, will see there was 10 times as much innovation in these companies in the last 2 years than it was in the 5 years before. Why? Because there was a need for people to have a better experience online because we were all working from home. So I think from my perspective, just figuring out what that business need is or what that pain is going to really go a long way in helping Web 2 onboard onto Web 3 as well.
Yeah, and I guess I would sort of build on what everybody else is saying in terms of the kinds of things that we're trying to work with customers to build. So we really think of Web3 as the opportunity for Web2 companies to move beyond what they can do in Web2 and do not just replicate what they their physical environments or their retail stores or the same kinds of experiences as they can get essentially anywhere else, but actually to do something incrementally different and interesting and valuable and engaging at scale with people like their consumers or their stakeholders in completely different ways than they could otherwise. So there are certainly kind of internal applications for that. So that might be, a very large company that needs to recruit a very large population of people. And so they have, different elements of that journey that are very difficult to handle with thousands of employees being recruited at the same time all over the world. So they might use the metaverse as a way of improving their sustainability, for example, by doing more of that sort of maybe onboarding or even the recruitment process online, or maybe having an ongoing experience for employees and their benefits system through a metaverse experience, and very much like the kind of example that in other cases that we might work on in the marketing and advertising sort of space. These are opportunities that have never existed. We've been inside the bounds of various different sort of channels before, and the formats that we could work in, and kind of very stuck to a certain number of characters or a certain length of video that was possible. But now the kind of chains are off, and there's so much opportunity for creativity in this space. There's so much opportunity to engage the community in creative generated content, enriching your spaces. And so much really cool stuff that you can do. And actually, I was really surprised by your comments, Michal, about why NFTs are, maybe not sort of where things need to go. And I understand the sort of skepticism from the gaming community. But if you think about NFTs, not just in the kind of investment context, but if you think about kind of wallets and NFTs as a gateway to experience with lots of utility, lots of things that consumers can now do and engage with brands on and get value, and there being a true two-way value exchange rather than just a brand sort of, quasi and fully virtual experiences as well.
Sure. I mean, what you just said sounds really good in theory, but this is not what's happening in practice.
We're doing it right now with brands.
No, I'm talking about the wider crypto NFT space. It's quite the opposite that's happening. And I think a critical question when it comes to onboarding brands from Web 2 to Web 3 is, blockchain. Like, do brands actually need to be involved with blockchain technology at all? And here I'm gonna resort to gaming because that's my area of expertise. But to some extent, the things that happen in gaming or that apply in gaming can apply to other industries as well. So, well, when you're talking about Web 2 brands engaging with the metaverse and with Web 3, this is usually happening through games in some way, shape, or form. And there's been a lot of talk about blockchain gaming. It's been touted as the future of games, but I think it's worth taking a closer look at what is blockchain enabling exactly for games. Because if you look at a game like Roblox, right? Roblox is the most popular game on the planet, 60 million DAUs, over 200 million MAUs. It has an in-game economy. People are getting paid. It has an in-game market with real money, I should say. It has an in-game marketplace. It has a vibrant community of many players, and it doesn't need blockchain. So my question is, why would blockchain be necessary in a standalone game? You could be arguing that, blockchain can be useful to the gaming ecosystem once interoperability happens, right? Because then you will need the unique assets from one game to be transferred to another game. But then we go to the issue of interoperability. Interoperability doesn't happen currently. It just doesn't work at scale in the gaming industry today. And why is that? Well, it's mostly for business reasons. Why aren't game publishers allowing, or developers allowing for interoperability? Why don't they want it to happen? Well, because there isn't a clear business proposition. Currently, most games are making a boatload of money by just selling in-game items to their customers, and these customers are paying the full price. Now, why would you allow these people to, take their assets out of your game and transfer them out of your game and into another game? Because game publishers and developers currently profit by keeping people locked into their own ecosystems. So for now, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for interoperability to happen. And my hypothesis is that if interoperability doesn't happen in the foreseeable future, why would you need blockchain in games? And I stand to be corrected. I've started as a believer in blockchain technology in gaming, but slowly but surely I've transitioned to the other side.
You might want to have a chat with the Animoca folks that are here today. I think, or they were here yesterday. But their entire business model around gaming is based on play to earn and NFTs and crypto, and completely independent of the frameworks of gaming of the past. And they have lots of users.
Well, lots of users is very debatable. Sure, lots of users for blockchain games, yes, but if you compare it to the popular games of today, I wouldn't call that lots of users. 200,000 monthly active users is not a lot of users. And the Sandbox, I've actually talked to the folks at the Sandbox yesterday, and they're using blockchain technology, but the way they make money isn't because of blockchain technology. The way they're basically just employing a different business model, right? So they don't take 75% of your in-game money as Roblox does. They just take 5%. Like Roblox could be doing that in theory, right? Like they could be taking 5% and still not need blockchain. And the Sandbox could be doing that. Like they could be taking 75% without blockchain, or 5%, or doesn't matter. So in my mind, it just doesn't make a lot of sense unless you have interoperability, but you don't have it.
But sorry, just one thing I wanted to say. Yeah. Yes, you don't, but I think what you had implied is I completely get that Web2 companies who own the platforms, they're the ones who want to lock the players in, and they want to have locked economies. But at the same time, there is something to be said for players. Actually, players are demanding a different experience. They're demanding an experience where they actually own their data, they own their accessories. So I think one of the things that the same companies feel is the pressure from their users and the fact that they're going to use. Right now, they're in control, but how long will they retain that control, one? And two, they're not the ones who are actually owning the technology. You'd mentioned that there's no reason for them to drive the interoperability. Do you think the technology hasn't matured yet? Yes. So that's why we don't have interoperability. I completely get that part. But it's not these middle players, and I'm going to use a word that they're the middlemen. They're not the ones who are controlling the technology to an extent that interoperability is not there. But what happens if there is interoperability? How are they going to stop things then, especially if the ecosystem is open? Just food for thought.
Yeah, we're going to take a question from the audience.
It's good to question things, first of all, and then what if your company, if you're owner of the popular game and your company goes down, what happens with that centralization? And I want to keep playing the game. I don't want game to be centralized. I want the ecosystem to keep building the game and new features without necessarily company controlling that.
Sure, but what happens if
That's
you're...
where blockchain is coming into picture.
And I'm going to counter that. What happens if you're a game built on blockchain and your game goes down? Well, sure. You'll still own the item on the blockchain.
Love this debate. Love those questions. Yeah. We had an earlier question about community as well. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Just take it. Tell us who you are, which company you're from, and your question.
Pardon me. Great. Steve Habby at the HSBC. I'm presenting at 6 o'clock, actually, if anyone wants to see what we're doing in Hong Kong. I'm curious, Mahai, just on yours perspective on data and users and communities, because there's quite a gap. I've spent quite a lot of time looking at the audiences and Genizens and Gen Zs, and then you look at the platform metrics, and they're all over the place, really. So, I mean, what's your experience so far on getting to the actual data, who the users are, their needs, and if that's aligned to the platform? Yes.
Are you talking about blockchain games specifically? Yeah, well, most blockchain... So first, no one really plays blockchain games today, and the people who play blockchain games do so because they want to make money. They don't care about the games. The games are pretty rudimentary, to put it nicely, and they're just mostly Ponzi schemes. They just... I mean, it's true. Most people engage with currently, or in the last year, have been engaging with blockchain games by buying assets. Then they either play the game or they don't, and they hope for a price appreciation of that asset, only to later sell that asset for a premium. And that's pretty much it. And the fact that these games aren't really fun doesn't help either. Sure, there are potentially good blockchain games on the way, like the Sandbox is a next level experience when you compare it to this first iteration of games. And then you also have these studios who are receiving funding, who are building these games. But I think it should be emphasized that building games is very difficult. It's very difficult. It requires specialized people, like actual games people who have been in the games industry, who have developed games in the past, and it requires a lot of funding. And I don't think most blockchain gaming studios have neither the people, nor the knowledge, nor the expertise, nor the money. So
Interesting,
the money
great.
can come quickly with a good ICO. But,
Yeah. I would like to finish by having the panelists tell us in one sentence, what is your advice to brands that are thinking of dipping their toes?
Okay, I think I'm just going to go back to my favorite mantra. Have a business case ready. If you don't have clear understanding of why you should do something, then you shouldn't do it, and especially not in a bear market.
So for me, they have to think about transformative approach, because once again, it's the nature of the asset. If it's blockchain related, so if they have a digital asset, it's new on the way you have to handle things, and so it's not as a usual digital experience where you can delegate to all the ownership to external parties. You have to internalize to some extent some control, or you might face big issues for your brand, your value, and the experience of your customers. So my message is always about security. I'm from Ledger. Happy to meet you all.
So I think when it comes to brands, when it comes to their metaverse, Web3 strategies, and so on, first, I think it's very important to identify your target audience. Like, what's your target audience? Who are you trying to reach with these strategies? Are you trying to reach NFT natives, crypto natives, gamers, everyone? Who are you trying to reach? After you've identified, your target audience, you kind of need to understand what your target audience enjoys doing. Like, the days of a one-size-fits-all gamer are long gone. And now pretty much you have these different groups of people. You have people who enjoy playing, you have people who enjoy buying, you have people who enjoy learning, watching, viewing, and so on, and socializing, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so really knowing your target. Yeah, I'm gonna cap that one sentence. Yeah.
Really,
Great. Really knowing your target audience and doing that research. Well done. Will?
I would treat it like you would treat any other major projects. I would go through the same processes internally that you have already gone through. I wouldn't be scared off by the language or be blinded by the sparkly lights of the metaverse. This is a business decision. Treat it like a business decision. Act like a business. Find people who speak a business language that can advise you. Don't go down the rabbit hole.
Excellent. Yeah.
Chasing NFTs and blockchains and arguing about gaming. Like this is business. I actually agree with Mihai for what it's worth.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we need to treat this like business.
I think we're having the panel all in alignment and then the last point. Good. Thank you.
And so despite enjoying the debate, I do tend to agree, like, with the point I think you were starting to make there about, like, if you're going for scale and reach right now, Roblox, Fortnite, like those kinds of things. Esports is another sort of very underappreciated space. AR, XR, like those are all things that are known now. They're much like easier and more straightforward to deploy and to use and to reach large audiences. If that's your objective, then look at those. Whereas the Web3 blockchain NFTs, they also have an application and a different purpose, and they're evolving, but they're at a different stage. They have different outcomes, and you just have to think very carefully and weigh up the various options. One isn't necessarily better than the other, but currently they're in different states of evolution.
Excellent. So round of applause for our panelists. Grab them if you have any questions, and we're going to take a 5-minute break. This is the time to, keep your arguments going. And we're going to set up for the next talk. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the best panel out of this whole thing.